I thought the worst part of moving to our dream neighborhood would be unpacking boxes. I was wrong. When the HOA president attacked my 7 months pregnant wife over our grass height, I discovered that some people's hatred runs deeper than community rules. 3 minutes later, everything changed forever. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching, also like and subscribe for more stories. The morning sun painted golden streaks across Riverside Park as I walked hand in hand with my wife Sarah. She was 7 months pregnant, her belly round and beautiful, carrying our first child. We had been trying for 3 years to have a baby, and now our dream was finally coming true. Look, honey, Sarah pointed to a bench under the old oak tree. Can we sit there? My back is hurting a little. I smiled and kissed her forehead. Of course, sweetheart. You need to rest. My name is David and I'm a detective with the city police. Sarah works as a nurse at the children's hospital. We're simple people who believe in treating everyone with kindness. We had moved to Willowbrook neighborhood 6 months ago, hoping to raise our family in a peaceful place. But we didn't know about Mrs. Margaret Thompson. Margaret Thompson was 55 years old and had been the head of the Homeowners Association for 8 years. Everyone in the neighborhood called her HOA Karen behind her back. She was the kind of woman who measured people's grass with a ruler and wrote violation notices if it was half an inch too long. She made life miserable for everyone, but people were too afraid to complain. Margaret had no children of her own and seemed to hate families with kids. She would complain about children playing too loudly, families having barbecues, or people parking their cars in the wrong direction. She lived alone in a big house and spent her days looking for reasons to make others unhappy. As Sarah and I sat on the bench, she rubbed her belly gently. The baby is kicking a lot today, she said with a tired smile. Maybe he knows we're in his favorite park, I replied, placing my hand on her stomach. We had decided not to find out the baby's gender, but I secretly hoped for a healthy child who would fill our home with laughter. Sarah suddenly stood up. David, I need to use the restroom. Can you wait here? Do you want me to come with you? I asked, concerned. No, it's okay. I'll be quick, she said, walking toward the public restrooms near the playground. I watched her go, my heart full of love and excitement for our future. But I noticed someone watching us from across the park. A woman with short gray hair and a stern face was staring at Sarah with obvious disapproval. She wore a bright yellow vest that said HOA Patrol and carried a clipboard. It was Margaret Thompson. I had heard about her from our neighbors but had never met her personally. People warned us to stay away from her, saying she was trouble. But I'm a police officer and I believe in giving everyone a chance. Maybe she wasn't as bad as people said. I was wrong. Margaret marched across the park toward me, her face twisted with anger. Excuse me, she said in a sharp voice. Are you David Miller from 1247 Oak Street? Yes, I am, I replied politely. And you are? I'm Margaret Thompson, HOA president, she said, puffing out her chest like she was announcing she was the queen. I need to talk to you about multiple violations. I frowned. Violations? What kind of violations? Margaret opened her clipboard and started reading. Your grass is 2 inches too high. Your mailbox needs repainting. Your wife hangs laundry outside, which is against neighborhood standards. And your car was parked facing the wrong direction last Tuesday. I stared at her in disbelief. Ma'am, we just moved here 6 months ago. We're still learning the rules. Can you give us some time to fix these things? Time? Margaret's voice got louder. I've been watching your house for weeks. You people think you can just move here and ignore our community standards. You people? I asked, feeling my temper rise. What do you mean by that? Margaret's face turned red. Young couples who have babies and think they own the world. You're going to ruin this neighborhood with your noise and mess. I stood up, trying to stay calm. Ma'am, we haven't even had our baby yet. And we're quiet, respectful people. I'm a police detective and my wife is a nurse. We contribute to this community. Police detective? Margaret laughed nastily. That explains the attitude. You think your badge makes you special? Before I could respond, I saw Sarah walking back from the restroom. She was moving slowly, one hand on her back and the other supporting her belly. She looked tired and uncomfortable. Margaret followed my gaze and her expression became even more hostile. And there's your wife, probably going to pop out more kids to make noise in our peaceful neighborhood. That's enough, I said firmly. You're being completely inappropriate. But Margaret wasn't finished. She walked toward Sarah, her clipboard raised like a weapon. Mrs. Miller, she shouted. I need to speak with you about your family's violations. Sarah looked confused and a little scared. I'm sorry, do I know you? I'm Margaret Thompson, HOA president, Margaret announced. Your family is violating multiple community standards, and I'm here to write you citations. Sarah looked at me helplessly. She was tired, pregnant, and just wanted to enjoy a peaceful morning in the park. I don't understand. What did we do wrong? Margaret started listing the same violations she had told me, but her voice was getting louder and more aggressive. Other people in the park started staring. Some parents moved their children away, sensing trouble. Ma'am, Sarah said softly, I'm 7 months pregnant. Can we please discuss this calmly? Pregnant? Margaret spat. That's exactly the problem. You young women think getting pregnant gives you special privileges. I stepped between them. That's it. You need to leave my wife alone. Don't tell me what to do. Margaret screamed. This is a public park, and I have every right to enforce community standards. Sarah tried to calm the situation. Please, we can fix whatever problems there are. We just want to be good neighbors. But Margaret was beyond reason. Years of bitterness and loneliness had twisted her into someone filled with hate. Good neighbors? You're destroying this community. First it's babies, then it's noise, then it's property values going down. You're being ridiculous, I said. We're going home. I took Sarah's arm gently, trying to lead her away from this crazy woman. But Margaret wasn't done. She followed us, still shouting. Don't walk away from me, she yelled. I'm not finished. Yes, you are, I said firmly. Leave us alone. That's when Margaret made the biggest mistake of her life. She grabbed Sarah's arm and spun her around roughly. Nobody ignores Margaret Thompson, she screamed. Sarah stumbled, off balance because of her pregnancy. She tried to catch herself, but Margaret grabbed her again, this time by both shoulders. Let go of me. Sarah cried, fear clear in her voice. I moved quickly to help my wife, but Margaret was in a rage. She shoved Sarah hard, sending her stumbling backward. You need to learn respect. Margaret shouted. Sarah fell to the ground with a cry of pain. She landed on her side, her hands immediately going to her belly. The baby, she gasped. David, something's wrong. I saw red. This insane woman had just attacked my pregnant wife. I knelt beside Sarah, checking for injuries while Margaret continued ranting. Maybe now you'll follow the rules. Margaret said, showing no concern for what she had just done. Sarah was crying, holding her stomach. David, I'm bleeding, she whispered. I looked down and saw blood on Sarah's dress. My heart stopped. Our baby was in danger because of this monster. I stood up slowly, my police training warring with my husband's rage. You just assaulted a pregnant woman, I said in a deadly quiet voice. I barely touched her. Margaret protested. She's being dramatic. Call 911. I shouted to the other people in the park. Now. Several people were already on their phones. A teenage boy was recording everything on his phone. An elderly man was running over to help. I knelt back down beside Sarah. Hang on, sweetheart. Help is coming. Sarah was pale and scared. Is the baby okay? Please tell me the baby is okay. I didn't know what to say. I held her hand while we waited for help, watching my wife suffer because of one woman's hatred. Margaret was still standing there, acting like she was the victim. This is ridiculous. I barely pushed her. She fell on purpose to make me look bad. The elderly man who had come to help looked at Margaret with disgust. Lady, you just attacked a pregnant woman. What's wrong with you? Mind your own business. Margaret snapped. More people were gathering now. Some were helping Sarah, others were recording Margaret's behavior. A mother with 2 small children was on the phone with 911, her voice shaking as she described what she had witnessed. The ambulance is coming, the mother told us. They said 5 minutes. But I wasn't just waiting for an ambulance. I was also a police officer, and Margaret had just committed assault. I reached for my phone to call my partner, Detective Mike Rodriguez. Mike, it's David. I need backup at Riverside Park immediately. My pregnant wife has been assaulted. What? Are you okay? Who did it? HOA President Margaret Thompson. She attacked Sarah and caused her to fall. Sarah's bleeding and we need an ambulance. We're on our way. 3 minutes out. I hung up and looked at Margaret, who was still complaining to anyone who would listen. This is all their fault. They're troublemakers. The teenage boy who had been recording stepped forward. Lady, I got everything on video. You attacked her for no reason. Margaret's face went white. Give me that phone. No way, the boy said, backing away. This is going straight to the police. That's when Margaret realized she was in serious trouble. She had been so focused on her power trip that she hadn't thought about the consequences. Now she was looking at assault charges and everyone had seen what she did. It was an accident, she suddenly changed her story. I was just trying to talk to her. You shoved my pregnant wife to the ground, I said, my voice shaking with anger. That wasn't an accident. Sarah squeezed my hand. David, I'm scared. The bleeding isn't stopping. I felt helpless. My wife was hurt, our baby might be in danger, and it was all because of this horrible woman who couldn't mind her own business. Then I heard the most beautiful sound in the world, sirens. Not just one but multiple sirens getting closer. David, a familiar voice called out. I looked up to see my partner Mike running across the park, followed by 4 other officers. Mike and I had been partners for 5 years and he knew Sarah well. She always baked cookies for the station during holidays. Sarah. Mike knelt beside us. How are you feeling? It hurts, Sarah said weakly. I'm scared about the baby. Mike looked at me with concern, then his gaze shifted to Margaret, who was trying to sneak away. Ma'am? Mike called out. Margaret Thompson? You need to stay right here. I don't have to listen to you, Margaret replied, but she stopped walking. The other officers quickly surrounded the area. Within seconds they had statements from multiple witnesses. The teenager handed over his phone with the video evidence. Then the ambulance arrived, followed by a fire truck. Paramedics rushed to Sarah's side, checking her vital signs and the baby's heartbeat. Good news, the paramedic said after a few minutes. Baby's heartbeat is strong. But we need to get you to the hospital for a full examination. I felt some relief, but I was still worried. Sarah was loaded onto a stretcher and I climbed into the ambulance with her. Don't worry about anything else, Mike told me. We've got this handled. As the ambulance pulled away, I saw Margaret arguing with the officers, still acting like she was the victim. But she was about to learn that actions have consequences. At the hospital, doctors ran tests on Sarah and the baby. After 2 hours of worry, Dr. Patricia Williams came out with news. Both mother and baby are stable, she said with a smile. The bleeding was from a minor injury, not from anything internal. But Sarah needs to rest for the next few days. I nearly cried with relief. Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much. Sarah was moved to a room where she would stay overnight for observation. I held her hand as she rested, thanking God that our baby was safe. My phone rang. It was Mike. How's Sarah? He asked immediately. She's okay. The baby's okay. They're keeping her overnight, but everything looks good. Thank God, Mike said. Listen, you need to know what happened after you left. Tell me. Margaret Thompson has been arrested for assault, battery, and endangering the welfare of an unborn child. The district attorney is considering additional charges. Good, I said, feeling satisfied that justice was being served. But that's not all, Mike continued. We ran a background check on her. David, she has a history of this kind of behavior. 3 previous assault charges in other neighborhoods, but the victims always dropped the charges because they were afraid of her. My blood boiled. She's done this before? Gets worse. We found out she was forced to resign from her last job as a school administrator for bullying students and parents. She moved here and somehow got elected to head the HOA. How did nobody know about this? She's good at hiding her past and intimidating people. But not anymore. The video is all over social media. Local news wants to interview you and Sarah. I looked at my wife, sleeping peacefully. We'll think about the interview. Right now, I just want her to recover. Over the next few days, the story exploded across the city. The video of Margaret attacking Sarah had been viewed millions of times. People were outraged that a pregnant woman had been assaulted over HOA violations. Margaret tried to defend herself in interviews, but every time she spoke, she made things worse. I was just trying to maintain community standards, she told one reporter. These people moved in and immediately started causing problems. By having a baby? The reporter asked. By ignoring the rules. The rules exist for a reason. So you felt justified in pushing a pregnant woman to the ground? Margaret paused, realizing how bad that sounded. It was an accident. She fell. But everyone had seen the video. There was no denying what she had done. The legal consequences came quickly. Margaret was fired from her position as HOA president. The neighborhood voted unanimously to remove her and ban her from any future HOA leadership roles. Criminal charges were filed: assault and battery, reckless endangerment, and disturbing the peace. Her trial was scheduled for 3 months later. But the social consequences were even worse for Margaret. Her neighbors, who had been afraid of her for years, finally spoke up. Story after story came out about her cruel behavior. Mrs. Chin, an elderly widow, told reporters how Margaret had fined her $500 for planting flowers that were the wrong color. Mr. Jackson, a veteran with PTSD, described how Margaret had called the police on him multiple times for having too many cars in his driveway. He collected classic cars as a hobby. The Williams family shared how Margaret had tried to force them to remove a wheelchair ramp they had built for their disabled son, calling it an eyesore. Every day new stories emerged about Margaret's reign of terror. People who had suffered in silence for years were finally brave enough to speak up. Sarah recovered beautifully. After a week of rest, she was back to her normal routine, though I was more protective than ever. Our baby continued to grow strong and healthy. I feel sorry for her, Sarah said one evening as we watched the news coverage. Sorry for her? I asked, surprised. She attacked you and could have hurt our baby. I know, Sarah said, rubbing her belly. But think about how miserable she must be to treat people like that. She has no family, no friends, no joy in her life. That's really sad. This is why I love my wife. Even after being attacked, she could find compassion for her attacker. But I wasn't feeling quite so forgiving. The trial came 3 months later. Sarah was 8.5 months pregnant by then, so close to giving birth that the judge offered to delay the proceedings. No, Sarah said firmly. I want this finished before our baby is born. The courtroom was packed. Margaret had hired an expensive lawyer who tried to paint her as a dedicated community leader who had made a simple mistake. My client devoted 8 years of her life to maintaining property values and community standards, the lawyer argued. She never intended to hurt anyone. But the prosecution had overwhelming evidence. The video, witness statements, and Margaret's history of violence painted a clear picture. When it was time for victim impact statements, Sarah slowly walked to the front of the courtroom. At 8.5 months pregnant, she was beautiful and powerful. My name is Sarah Miller, she began, her voice clear and strong. 3 months ago, Margaret Thompson attacked me in a public park because my husband and I didn't cut our grass short enough. She paused, letting that sink in. I was 7 months pregnant. I was tired, just trying to enjoy a peaceful morning with my husband. I had done nothing wrong except exist in a space that Margaret Thompson felt she controlled. Margaret stared at the floor, unable to look at Sarah. When she pushed me to the ground, I thought I might lose my baby. For 2 hours at the hospital, my husband and I didn't know if our child would survive. We had tried for 3 years to have this baby, and one woman's anger almost took that away from us. Sarah's voice grew stronger. But this isn't just about me. This is about every person who has been bullied, threatened, or intimidated by someone who thinks they have power over others. Margaret Thompson used her position to make people's lives miserable for years. She needs to learn that her actions have consequences. When Sarah finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Even Margaret's lawyer looked moved. The verdict was swift, guilty on all charges. Margaret was sentenced to 6 months in jail, 2 years of probation, anger management classes, and was ordered to pay for all of Sarah's medical expenses. As the bailiff led Margaret away, she finally looked at Sarah. For the first time, she seemed to understand the magnitude of what she had done. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Sarah nodded. I hope you get the help you need. 2 weeks after the trial, Sarah went into labor. After 12 hours of delivery, our son was born, healthy, beautiful, and perfect. We named him David Jr. but planned to call him DJ. As I held my son for the first time, I thought about everything that had happened. A crazy woman had tried to hurt our family, but in the end, love had won. Sarah's compassion, our community's support, and justice had prevailed. Margaret Thompson served her full sentence. In jail, she was required to attend therapy sessions where she finally confronted the anger and loneliness that had driven her behavior. When she was released, she moved away from our neighborhood. We heard later that she had started volunteering at a children's hospital, trying to make amends for her past actions. Our neighborhood became a better place without her reign of terror. The new HOA president, Mrs. Chin, focused on bringing people together instead of tearing them apart. Community barbecues replaced violation notices. Playgrounds were built instead of unnecessary restrictions. Sarah returned to work at the children's hospital, and I continued my job as a detective. But we were changed by the experience. Sarah started a support group for women who had experienced violence during pregnancy. I began speaking at community events about standing up to bullies. DJ grew into a happy, healthy toddler who loved playing in the same park where his mother had been attacked. But now it was a place of joy, not fear. One day when DJ was 2 years old, we were at the park when Sarah pointed to the bench where everything had started. Remember when I was pregnant and that mean lady hurt me? She asked. I nodded, still feeling anger when I thought about it. I'm glad it happened, Sarah said. I stared at her in shock. What? Why? Because it showed us how strong we are together. It brought our community together. It taught us that we can't stay silent when people are being hurt. And most importantly, it made us appreciate what we have even more. She was right. The attack had been terrible, but it had also revealed the strength in our marriage, our community, and our family. It had shown us that when people stand together against bullies, justice wins. As I watched DJ playing happily in the same spot where his mother had been hurt, I realized that love really does conquer hate. Margaret Thompson had tried to destroy our peace with her anger and control, but instead, she had only made us stronger. The story became a symbol in our city of why it's important to stand up to bullies and support each other. Sarah's courage in facing her attacker, our community's willingness to speak up, and the justice system's response had created positive change that lasted for years. And every time we walked through Riverside Park as a family, we remembered that no one has the right to hurt others, no matter what power they think they have. Love, compassion, and justice will always be stronger than hate, anger, and control. Our son DJ would grow up in a world where his parents had already fought to make things better. And if he ever faced a bully like Margaret Thompson, he would know that he didn't have to face them alone. In the end, Margaret Thompson's attempt to destroy our happiness had only made our family stronger and our community better. That's the real power of love over hate. It turns even the worst attacks into opportunities for growth, healing, and positive change. Justice had been served, our family was safe, and our future was bright. That's all any parent can ask for.